Hello and welcome. This recording is part of the Few Forgotten Women project. It is my great pleasure to introduce Helen Shields, who is going to talk to us about some coroner's cases from about 1830 and what we can learn from them. Inevitably, some of the talk describes or implies very unpleasant deaths, but the focus is very much on what we can learn about women's lives. Thank you, Helen.
In the decade between 1824 and 1835, about 5 inquests per year were recorded in North Devon alone, where death was due to clothing catching fire. Of the 50 cases, almost 90% were children aged 6 or younger. Just a few of their names are recorded here. This compilation of mini-stories was inspired by a list of coroner's cases found at the North Devon Journal and compiled by Lindsay Withers, which can be found on Januki. The dates given are those of the newspaper reports. Now, there are several reasons why these brief stories are part of the Few Forgotten Women project. Before civil registration, many of the young victims may or may not have featured in a baptism. They certainly did not appear in a census, and perhaps the only record of their short lives is the inquest, easily missed by family historians and at risk of being forgotten. Secondly, reports rarely name the mother. Unless they were widowed, we don't even know their names, typifying one of the reasons women are more difficult to trace than their male counterparts, and they easily become forgotten. Remember too, these deaths were just the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. There will have been many more women and children who were scarred or had minor burns. Today, I hope to show how coroner's cases, even the brief reports in the newspapers, can give us some insight into women's daily lives, perhaps the turn of phrase used by people at that time and place, and help provide background to our ancestors' lives, even if they're not the ones specifically named or involved. This is a typical scenario. Elizabeth Ann Ackland, aged 4 years, daughter of Abraham Ackland, labourer. On Thursday the 17th, the mother of the deceased went into the garden adjoining the dwelling house, leaving the deceased and 2 other children by the fire, the eldest of whom was 6 years old. She had not been absent above a minute or two before the eldest child came running out and told her that the deceased was on fire. She instantly ran into the house, wrapped an apron around her, and extinguished the fire. A surgeon was sent for who administered to her necessities, but the deceased died on the following day. Verdict: accidental death. Now, the fire in the hearth was an essential part of the home, especially in winter months. It functioned not only to provide heat for the house, but also for cooking. For instance, here, Mary Parker, 9-year-old daughter of a labouring man, was hanging a kettle on the fire, and a child belonging to Mr. Turner, aged 6, was taking a tea kettle of boiling water off the fire. And we have 2 examples of adults as well. Joanna Morris, a charwoman, taking a vessel of turpentine from the fire at the house of Mr. Lee, druggist. She spilled a small portion, which, falling on the fire, the whole became ignited. And then Grace Stowell, 19 years of age, was preparing a solution of beeswax and turpentine to polish her furniture. I'll give you a few moments to read about her. We often get a little more detail for teenagers and adults. But of course, many children did household chores, helped and maintained the fire, for example. 2 little girls, daughters of Mr. Baker, carpenter, got up before their mother to light the fire, the youngest about 7 years old. And another 7-year-old, Susan Brown, was putting some wood on the fire. Candles, too, were a potential hazard, And as with all the other examples, the fatalities follow when there is no adult present. So a little 7-year-old named Burnett, who in the absence of her mother from her residence, caught her clothes on fire with a lighted candle. And it's not always the mother. A child 20 months old, son of Mr. Jones, cabinet maker, which in the temporary absence of the servant who had left the child sitting in his armchair, had drawn the candle off the table onto himself. Now, there were many reasons to leave the room or the house for a short while. Thomas Price's mother had gone into the garden to hang out some clothes. Infant Yo's mother had gone to fetch water for breakfast from the conduit. James Webber's son, aged 6, his mother had gone with her husband's dinner. And baby Brooke's mother had gone out on an errand to a neighbour's house for about 2 minutes. Grace Marshall's mother was given a hard time by the coroner. An infant aged 3 years who was on Sunday left with a younger child by the fireside by the mother, while she went about a quarter of a mile to fetch milk. The coroner noticed in strong terms the extreme carelessness of the mother in leaving such children of such tender years alone in the house. We might agree with this, but given several small children to control or carry and with no pram and milk to carry home, the choice was not necessarily so easy. Some reports suggest more sympathy for the mother. William Hammett, aged 5 years, the mother was not absent from her house 10 minutes, during which time the melancholy accident happened. Though in every case, the verdict was accidental death. In many cottages, of course, there was a lack of space, and all sorts of tasks were done by the fireside. Mary Stoneman, 16 years of age, sat before the fire, occupied in dressing a little child, which she was nursing for an afflicted neighbour. And Elizabeth Parker, wife of a dairyman, plucking poultry by the fireside. Of course, the style of clothing and type of material may well have contributed. A little boy, 2 years and 8 months old, son of a sawyer called George Parkman, the father being gone to his labour and the mother still in bed, having just been confined, the child went downstairs and, seating himself before the fire in his loose nightdress, a spark flew out. Mothers, of course, often had to work. A widow, Mary Rowler, was engaged out at a day's work, leaving the deceased in the care of a sister about 8 years old. And sometimes it was not just a life that was lost. The wife of a labouring man of the name Tallin went out to a field to winnow some barley, leaving 3 children, the eldest of whom being about 7 years old, in the house, where she locked them in until her return, leaving no fire in for fear of an accident. During her absence, the eldest child lit a match, in doing which she set her clothes on fire and in her alarm ran into a back house where there was a quantity of straw, to which the fire communicating, the whole was soon ablaze. The whole of the little property of this poor industrious family was destroyed, and they are therefore left destitute of everything save the clothes they had on. And the eldest child died. Now, in this case, we do get a hint of the way that the community may have rallied around. I'll give you a few moments to read this one. We do see some evidence of play and leisure too. Poor Lucy Vinicum, aged 14, had been left to take care of her 5 brothers and sisters all day. In the evening, she sat down by the fire with a book, intending to read, but exhausted, she fatally fell asleep. Of course, no mention is made of the lack of running water easily available to douse the flames or reduce the heat of the burns, though this undoubtedly is a factor contributing. Similarly, the lack of fire extinguishers or blankets. But even if they had been available, in the panic, the children may not have made use of the available resources. We see an example here of Elizabeth Phillips, 7 years old. On the occurrence of the accident, the child ran out into the street, passed over a stream of water, but in her extreme agitation, she did not avail herself of its assistance to extinguish the destructive element. Lessons could or perhaps should have been learned. I'm going to bring this talk to a close with part of an advert for a remedy for burns found in the Morning Advertiser on Saturday, the 12th of December, 1829. Hint for the nursery. The lamentable accidents occurring to children in the winter season by their clothes taking fire may be effectually prevented by the use of wire guards so as to preclude the possibility of children coming in contact with the grate or stove. But when such unfortunate casualties happen, immediate recourse should be had to an efficient remedy, which ought to be always at hand. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Helen. That has given us some fascinating insights into women's and children's lives around 1830. If you have found it interesting as you were listening, please click the like button to help others find us. The link to our website and the direct link to Helen's written article can be seen below. You may need to click on the Show More button. Most of the stories concern the life of a potentially forgotten woman. Do listen to some more. To be alerted when a new story is added, you can click the subscribe button for free, and you may like to explore many more stories on our website. Thank you for your time and attention.